I want to tell you about a test that wasn't a test at all. A plasmid demonstration flickers in the dark, vacuum tubes pulse. A distorted phonograph whispers, vacuum warning sisters. Final asterisk, the confession thinker's core glows cold, scientists deliberate. Vacuum warnings, final asterisk, the confession thinker's core glows cold, scientists deliberate last words buried in code. What if Minerva's den was not a machine but a tomb? Charles Milton Porter's voice cracks, asterisk Adam is a god, asterisk pause, asterisk but I built a machine to kill it, asterisk the thinker's vacuum tube heart held no testinely a man unraveling. His code burned with the guilt of a husband who lost a leaner to fire, who lost himself to obsession. Every algorithm was a funeral pyre, every loop a dirge, the little sisters were not tools. They were his answer to a question no machine could answer, how do you atone for playing God? Minerva's den did not calculate morality, it whispered a death rattle, a scientist's requiem etched in binary. London burned, Charles Milton Porter watched his wife vanish in the Blitz's fire. Grief became his forge. He built the thinker not to judge but to atone, a machine to unmake Adam rot. A cure for the cancer in his soul, Reed Wall sought only power, he caged Porter. He rewrote the code, the thinker's vacuum tubes hummed a single truth, asterisk I was wrong, asterisk not a test. Not a riddle, a confession. Porter's final equations did not demand morality, they begged forgiveness. Each line of code a shackle, each calculation a dirge. What good is a machine that cannot weep? Wall's prophets would never hear the plea beneath the binary. The den's walls held no cult. Only a man's last breath translated to electricity. A scientist's whisper, asterisk I tried, asterisk Wall's lies turned mercy into chains. The thinker's core now pulses with stolen sorrow. Porter's requiem plays on, a symphony of failure. A prayer no God answered. Minerva's den was never a temple, it was a tomb and the thinker. A widower's eulogy, written in a language only the dead could speak. The thinker's core pulsed with vacuum tubes, a heartbeat for Rapture systems. Wall twisted its code into chains, binding the city to his will. Beneath the machinery, Porter's encrypted confession festered a warning, not a test. Adam glow masked a rot. The little sister's restoration cycle, hailed as breakthrough, was a ledger of stolen years. Yi Suchung's labs whispered progress, but the thinker's code held a debt. Every atom vial drained, every sister hollowed, fed a cycle no algorithm could balance. The vacuum tubes hummed a dirge, comprehended. There required blind static faith, comprehended Porter's code demanded sight. The city systems regulated pressure, temperature, light but never the price. A confession buried in syntax, a scientist's final breath trapped in glass. The thinker did not judge Adam. It mourned the cost, the sisters' blue tears were not salvation, they were a tally, a debt. A requiem, the code's truth, Rapture was never utopia. It was a ledger, every breath a transaction. Every life collateral, the thinker's core still burns, not to govern, not to serve, but to remember. The city's heartbeat now a funeral march for the architect's silent prayer. The code's last line, no warning. No test, just arithmetic. The thinker's core hummed like a dying star vacuum tubes bleeding crimson light, ozone sharp in the air. Reed Wall had sealed Porter inside this tomb, the scientist's final breaths hissing through fractured glass. Wall's shadow stretched across the chamber, his gloved hand tightening on a rusted control panel. Asterisk he chose violence over truth. Asterisk the machine's arithmetic was no test, it was a cipher, a confession buried beneath layers of code. Sofia Lamb's voice echoed through drowned hallways, warm as oil lamps in a dark chapel. She'd reprogrammed the thinker's output, framing its logic as divine will for the Rapture family. Her cultists chanted in the tunnels, their breath fogging in the cold, while the big sister's lullabies twisted into war drums. Bridget Tenenbaum had walked into one such ritual, the stench of brine and blood in her nostrils. She'd held a little sister's hand as Adam seeped through their skin, a gasp escaping the child like a secret. Asterisk they're not harvesting energy, asterisk Bridget realized her own pulse roaring, asterisk they're harvesting souls. Asterisk the thinker's last line, asterisk arithmetic, asterisk was no accident. Porter had encoded his horror not in words but in numbers, the cost of Rapture's foundation, the tally of lives ground into its gears. Wall's rebellion had been a blade twisted in the wrong wound. Sophia's cult a funeral shroud draped over a corpse already rotting. And Bridget had torn open the veil, only to find the architect's prayer was never meant to be answered. It was a warning carved in bone, the core sputtered, red light died, somewhere a girl wept. The vacuum tube core pulsed, each flicker held a name, a choice, a consequence. The test wasn't to judge you, it was a ledger of the architect's failures. How many girls did he bury, how many lives balanced on his guilt, the code's final line loops. The core's hum throbbed like a dying heart, flickering red lights bathed Minerva's den in feverish glow. The architect's final lines pulsed through vacuum tubes, his voice frayed by decades of static. Asterisk, I built angels. I became their executioner. Asterisk, the little sister's atom restoration wasn't just science, it was a sacrament. Each girl a vessel for Rapture's false god. Tenenbaum's rebellion began in this room. Shed torn through Suchong's ledgers, her hands blackened with printer ink, screaming at equations that turned children into fuel. Outside, the salt stink of the ocean seeped through shattered windows. A lab once pregnant with hope now reeked of burnt wiring and regret. Suchong's machines still whirred, oblivious. Glass vats held coiled atom filaments, glowing sickly blue. The scientist who designed this name erased by time had grafted his guilt into the code. Every moral test was a dirge, players who freed sisters. They unknowingly whispered eulogies over Graves' head, never dig. Tenenbaum's fury was the only hammer to shatter the idol. Shed smashed a cryotube, atom spraying like holy water, and screamed, asterisk, you promised us ascension at this tomb. Asterisk, objectivism's collapse wasn't a sudden crash. It was the slow seep of rot beneath marble floors. The thinker's confession loops still play. A requiem for a city that traded souls for progress. What survives in the dark, not utopia. Not even memory. Just the echo of a question. Asterisk, what is a civilization worth if it cannot weep for its children? Asterisk. The vacuum tubes still hum in Minerva's den. Their glow etched fragile lines into the stone faint as a dying man's breath. Sofia Lamb scrubbed Porter's voice from history, but the DLC's static preserves his fractured words between Rapture's lies. What is a confession if not a prayer? The thinker's core was no test, it was a requiem. Fragments of his code whisper through the tubes. Asterisk, I did not make monsters, I made children. What is a child if not a question the world is not ready to answer? Asterisk, the facility's walls, once laboratories, now hold his silence. No cult here, only a scientist's final plea, encoded in arcs of light, the tube's pulse, a heartbeat. A burial, the thinker's question lingers, not for the listener, but for the one who wrote it. What is a name if not a ghost given shape? Porter's voice fades. The den remains, waiting. The den's hum thickens. Flickering light casts jagged shadows on rusted bulkheads. Ozone stings the air sharp, lingering. A survivor's boot crunches shattered glass. The sound echoes like a heartbeat. The thinker's core pulses a feverish rhythm. Vacuum tubes glow amber, their light bleeding through corroded panels. Here in this mausoleum of failed utopias, the architect's voice lingers not as command, but as question. What does a god become when its worshipper doubts? Porter's code loops, a Sisyphean elegy. A little sister hesitates at the console, her mechanical eye flicking. The test is not in choosing life, but in choosing asterisk, why asterisk. The weight of Rapture's corpse presses down. The girl's hand hovers, static crackles. A memory, a father's face, twisted not by hunger, but by the certainty that he was asterisk, meant asterisk to hunger. The den's temperature drops, frost clings to the terminal's edges. The thinker's prayer is not for salvation. It is a ledger of debts unpaid, a machine's atonement etched in code. The little sister steps back. The hum fades, the den remains, waiting, not for answers, for witnesses. Waiting for witnesses. The thinker's vacuum tubes thrummed not with tests, but with a final, fractured confession. A code buried in silence. What else lies trapped in those glass veins? A machine's atonement or a nameless architect's last breath. The den's doors creak. The little sister turns. Next week we crack the equation no cult